This script is written in the reflective cinematic style of the life outline, focusing on the human story and the philosophical weight of these different paths. It adapts the 9 categories of wealth from the sources into archetypes of the smuggling world, exploring the intersection of risk, time, and legacy. Every type of smuggler explained. The life outline. Visual. A wide static shot of a calm sea at dusk. The water is a deep navy, and the sky is a gradient of bruised purple. A small boat with no lights cuts a silent wake across the screen. Soft, melancholic piano begins. Narrator. We like to think of borders as lines on a map, solid, unyielding things that define where one world ends and another begins. But for some, borders are not walls. They are membranes. They are things to be navigated, understood, and eventually bypassed. When we talk about the world of smuggling, we often reach for the sensational, the action movies, the sirens, the high-stakes drama. But the reality is far more human. It is a story of how people relate to risk, how they manage time, and how they view the legacy they leave behind. Just as there are 9 distinct ways people build and hold wealth in the modern world, there are 9 ways people navigate the shadows. Tonight, we look at the life outlines of the smugglers. Visual, a black screen with elegant thin white text. 1. The dynastic smuggler. Narrator. There's a kind of operation that doesn't feel like an operation at all. It feels like a tradition. In the world of wealth, we call this old money. The dynastic smuggler was not born of desperation or a sudden big idea. They were simply born into it. For families like this, the roots they use are as much a part of their heritage as a family crest or a piece of inherited land. They don't see themselves as criminals. They see themselves as the stewards of a multi-generational bridge that exists where the law says it shouldn't. These operators are quiet and understated. You won't find them in the headlines, and you certainly won't see them flashing their gains. They understand a truth that the new world often forgets, that visibility is a liability. Their goal isn't to make a quick score, it is preservation. They invest in things that last, discrete infrastructure, long-standing political understandings, and the education of their children, who will one day take over the helm. Their wealth is measured not in what they spend, but in the silence they maintain. The goal is always to pass on a more secure, more invisible route to the next generation than the one they received. Visual. A fast-moving montage of neon city lights, a person counting stacks of cash in a dimly lit room, and a high-end sports car speeding through a tunnel. Text. 2. The self-made runner. Narrator. Then there is the self-made runner. This is the new money of the underworld. These are the individuals who built their operations from nothing. They didn't inherit a contact list or a secret cove. They had an idea. They took a massive risk, and they turned a single shipment into a fortune. Because they didn't grow up with the weight of a dynasty, their relationship with their success is different. Statistically, about 68% of the ultra-wealthy today are self-made, and the same shift has happened in the shadows. The self-made runner is often more visible than the dynastic families. You see it in the lifestyle, the mansions, the luxury cars, the private jets. For them, this isn't necessarily about arrogance. It is the natural human result of experiencing significant wealth for the very first time. They are the dominant force in the modern world, driven by a hunger that only those who grew up with nothing can truly understand. Visual. A close-up of a person in a hoodie, their face illuminated only by the blue light of 3 computer monitors. Text. 3. The digital architect. Narrator. Within the world of the self-made, there is a specific breed that has emerged only in the last few decades, the digital architect. In the source material, these are the tech-rich. These are the coders, the engineers, and the thinkers who realize that you don't need a boat to move something across a border. You only need a connection. What makes them different is speed. A startup operation launched in a spare bedroom or a garage can become a global powerhouse in a matter of months, moving data, assets, and information at a velocity that no previous generation could have imagined. Interestingly, the digital architect often lives modestly compared to their actual reach. They aren't interested in the flashy displays of the self-made runner. They wear plain clothes and drive ordinary cars, all while quietly owning the digital pathways that the rest of the world relies on. They are the masters of the invisible frontier. Visual, a slow drone shot of a massive rusting warehouse district by a river. The sun is setting behind the cranes. Text 4. The infrastructure master. Narrator. While the digital world moves fast, some people prefer the weight of the physical. These are the infrastructure masters, modeled after the real estate rich. Smuggling is often seen as a game of movement, but for this archetype, it is a game of patience. They don't care about what is inside the containers. They care about who owns the dock they sit on. They think in decades, not years. They understand a fundamental truth. Land is finite. It cannot be manufactured or duplicated. They might start small, buying one derelict warehouse near a border, fixing it up, and using the rent to buy a second one. Over time, this process compounds into enormous wealth and influence. They are the landlords of the forbidden. They aren't running the race. They are the ones who own the track. Visual, a beautiful person in expensive clothes walking through a crowded airport, ignored by security as they smile for a fan's selfie. Text, V, the influence smuggler. Narrator. Then we have the influence smuggler, the celebrity rich of the trade. Their power is uniquely tied to their fame. Their income or their opportunities often come in large, sudden bursts, a viral moment or a high-profile event that opens a door that is normally locked. But the smartest ones realize that fame is a flickering candle. Like the most successful celebrities, they use their public status as starting capital. They don't just move items. They build legitimate brands and businesses that serve as the perfect, untouchable front. For them, the fame is just the destination they use to hide the journey. Their real wealth is in the businesses they build on the side, which eventually become worth more than the fame itself. Visual. A professional-looking person in an athletic tracksuit, checking their watch while standing next to a private plane. Text 6. The quick strike smuggler. Narrator. There is a certain kind of operator who knows that their window is closing. This is the quick strike smuggler, mirrored after the athlete rich. Their career is defined by urgency. Just as a professional athlete only has about 10 to 15 years of peak earning potential, the quick strike smuggler knows that the physical and mental toll, not to mention the risk of being caught, means they cannot do this forever. This reality forces them to think differently. The most successful ones treat their high-risk playing career as a simple salary. While they are at their peak, they are already building a business portfolio on the side, in media, in services, in legitimate trade. They are the ones who retire early, disappearing into a life of quiet luxury, while the world is still looking for the person they used to be. Visual, a clean minimalist office in a high-rise building. A hand rotates a gold pen on a desk. Text 7. The syndicate financier. Narrator. Category 7 is the syndicate financier. These are the investor rich. These individuals never touch a product. They never drive a boat. They don't even know where the borders are. Their wealth is built by putting their money to work in the operations of others. They use the tools of the legitimate financial world, private equity, venture capital, and hedge funds, to fund the startups of the shadow world. What makes this archetype different is that their influence is almost entirely invisible in the early stages. They live quietly for years, perhaps in a modest apartment, while their capital silently compounds in the background across a dozen different operations. One day, the numbers become so large they are impossible to ignore, but by then, the financier is too far removed from the ground to ever be held accountable. Visual, a glitching screen showing fluctuating green and red charts. Text 8. The borderless ghost. Narrator. Then there is the newest arrival, the borderless ghost. These are the crypto rich. These are often young people with no traditional background in finance or logistics. They recognized a new digital frontier and took a risk that others were too afraid of. Their wealth was created almost overnight, multiplying their original stake by thousands of times. But this life is defined by volatility. The fortunes that took the infrastructure master decades to build were built here in months. And in some cases, they are lost just as quickly. They operate in a world where the rules are written in code, and the only border that matters is the one between the on-chain and the off-chain. Visual, a split screen. On one side, a young person looks nervously at a briefcase. On the other, an elderly person in a faded jacket pumps gas into an old car. Text: 9, the inheritor, and the quiet runner. Narrator. Finally, we come to the most human stories of all, the inheritor and the quiet runner. The inheritor is different from the dynastic families. They didn't grow up in the culture, they simply received a single, massive transfer of responsibility, perhaps after the sudden passing of a parent. This is a test of character. Some find the discipline to manage it, but many lose everything within a few years. They discover too late that managing this life is a skill, and it isn't automatically passed down with the assets. But then there is the quiet runner, the quiet rich. These are the most surprising of all. They are ordinary-looking people, the accountant, the small business owner, the teacher next door. They never had a big score or a dramatic event. They simply made the trade a daily habit for 30 or more years, quietly saving and investing their small gains. They drive used cars and live in modest homes while their hidden accounts tell a story of immense, silent wealth. According to the data, they are the least visible, and yet they are among the most common. Visual. The sun has finally set. The small boat from the beginning is gone. The sea is black, reflecting the stars. The music fades to a single, pulsing note. Narrator. We are all shaped by the lines we choose to cross and the ones we choose to respect. Whether we are building a dynasty, chasing a quick strike, or quietly saving for a lifetime, our choices create the outline of our lives. In the end, it's not about what we move across the border. It's about who we become in the process. Visual, fade to black. Text, the life outline. Thank you for watching.